And we're in the studio with David Barsamian talking about Lebanon and the crisis in the Mideast. Our next guest is Yaron Gamburg, who is the Deputy Consul General from the Consulate General of Israel in Los Angeles. Mr. Gamburg, we're glad to have you with us on Metro today.
Hello, good morning.
Thank you for joining us. You've just heard the author and commentator Tarek Ali, at least the last few minutes of his commentary. Is there anything you'd like to respond to in what he said?
We just heard a perfect piece of Palestinian, I wouldn't say Palestinian, of the terrorist propaganda that your guest was speaking. I think that to call Hezbollah political organization is just something that couldn't be allowed anymore, and everybody understands that we have terrorist organization whose own purpose is to destroy the state of Israel. Just a couple of minutes ago, we got the news from Israel, from the city of Nazareth in the northern part of Israel, 40 miles from the border with Lebanon, and the two children, Arab Israeli children, were killed, one 3-year-old, one 9-year-old, by the Hezbollah rockets that they just shoot at Israel. And we just understand that this shooting was to show that Hezbollah targets not only Jews, they target also Druze, Arab Israelis, everybody what is in Israel, but also they target Nazareth, the city that is a sacred city to Christianity. And this is a clear message that they would like to show not just to us, but to all of us in the world, what they're going to do. They would like just to destroy all of us.
Well, the point has been made on this program and other times that Israel's overwhelming response to the initial Hezbollah military action and the capture of 2 soldiers was out of proportion and has triggered Hezbollah's, in turn, greater military response. You've done prisoner exchanges with Hezbollah in the past. Why didn't that occur on this occasion?
Excuse me, can you please tell me what's proportion? So I and maybe your listeners will understand what's proportion about. Would you like us also to send rockets like they do, just indistinctly shooting at everything and everybody? I think that our reaction, yes, it's unproportionate reaction, because if it would, God forbid, unproportionate, Lebanon wouldn't exist anymore. So I would like you to be very careful with what you're saying about overwhelming. What is overwhelming is that for 5, even more than 5 years, almost 10 years, Hezbollah was allowed by the Lebanon government to accumulate this power in Lebanon, not just in becoming part of the political process and political map in Lebanon. They have 2 ministers in their in the Lebanese government. That's why Lebanese government is responsible for what's going on. Hezbollah dragged Lebanese into this warfare, and actually they kidnapped not just only our 2 soldiers, they kidnapped the whole of Lebanon and the democracy in Lebanon. They just started to appear. So any other country in the world would respond in the same way as Israel do. And I would like to tell you that Israel response is a very measured response. We are going after Hezbollah. Hezbollah is our target number 1, and believe me, many Lebanese in their hearts say thank you to us. And I would like to tell you that we would like to know we would like you to know that many people in Lebanon, especially in the southern border of Lebanon, are now in the villages, and they are held forcefully by Hezbollah, who are prevented from them to leave their villages, because Hezbollah has its rockets, has its missiles in the villages. Purposefully, they would like to be in the midst of the civilian population, so to make it much more difficult, morally, from the moral standpoint, to have our operation. That's why we would like the civilians to leave these areas, and Hezbollah, and we know this now from our resources, Hezbollah prevents, and even with the fire from the people, civilians in these villages, to leave these villages. I think it's very important to understand.
Well, my initial point, and I apologize if I wasn't clear, was that in the past there have been prisoner exchanges rather than military action.
Yeah, about the exchange. So first of all, we don't have Lebanon prisoners in our, and we the prisoners that we held. It's not just prisoners; it's terrorists who were who made terrorist acts against Israelis in Israel. And according to the court's decision, they're running their sentences in the Israeli jails. But among them, we don't have Lebanese. We have Palestinians, we have other nationalities, but not Lebanese. So talking about the prisoner swap, and after all, they were not kidnapped. They did the terrorist acts against Israeli targets. So they were judged like in any other country and sentenced. Our soldiers were on the Israeli sovereign territory, not making any kind of provocation against Hezbollah or Lebanon or anything else, and Hezbollah infiltrated our territory, kidnapped the Israeli soldiers, and just took them back. And I would like to tell you and to stress this point, that we cannot allow them to think that this kind of behavior, they can continue with that, because if you wouldn't respond, they would continue with the kidnappings, thinking that this is just the usual thing that they can do. This kind of thing will never happen. We are going to change the rules of the engagement, or the rules of the game, if you want, in this area.
Are you going to change the rules of the Geneva Convention, which outlaws collective punishment and reprisals against non-combatants? I mean, power plants,
I would like
roads,
to ask you, what's about collective punishment of 1 million Israelis that are now under direct threat of the Hamas rockets?
A very valid question for Hezbollah, but I'm asking it to you as a representative of the Israeli government.
Yes, and I would like to tell you, according to Geneva Conventions, civilian population that it is involved in the terrorist activities is not exempt from they don't have any kind of exemption in this situation, because this is according to the Geneva Convention, and according to the Geneva Convention, the Red Cross should see these soldiers, and they were refused to see these soldiers when they asked Hezbollah. So if you know Geneva Convention, look carefully for what is written there.
Mr. Consul General, this is David Barsamian. Thank you for joining us.
I'm Deputy Consul General.
Deputy Consul General, thank you, sir, for your time this afternoon. I know it's a difficult period for you. I wanted to follow up on your comment that the IDF response in Lebanon has been, quote, very measured. According to Jim Muir on the BBC and Robert Fisk of The Independent, they are reporting that lots of roads and bridges and Lebanese infrastructure have been destroyed by the IDF. Do you have information on that?
Yes, of course. We targeted the Beirut airport because this was the major port, the major port where Hezbollah got the weaponry ammunition from Iran, and they got it through the Beirut International Airport. The second point is that we would like to prevent the kidnapped soldiers, to be taken from Lebanon to any other country. As we know, this happened in the past. So this also explains these 2 points, why we targeted also the highways. For example, highway Beirut, the Damascus, and in the last 48 hours, we have seen already tracks coming from Syria, bringing rockets from Syria, probably Iranian rockets from Syria to Lebanon. So we are not targeting, of course, infrastructure of Lebanon, but because we would like to target infrastructure, we target those parts of infrastructure that are very important for Hezbollah and for its survival.
Well, let me just follow up on that, if I may. The IDF has told the population of southern Lebanon to move out for their own safety. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, how can they move out when the roads and bridges have been damaged?
Okay, listen. Of course, not all of the bridges and all of the routes were damaged, but of course they can leave. But as I mentioned, they are not allowed to leave by Hezbollah, who are compelling them to stay there. They cannot leave the the villages. So it's they even don't have this possibility to leave, and if they can leave, they can live in other ways. So it's not something that is not totally impossible. It's impossible because they are prevented by Hezbollah militants to do this.
Yaron Gamburg is our guest, Deputy Consul General at the Consulate General of Israel in Los Angeles. Mr. Gamburg, I don't know how much time you have remaining to join us.
I have another 5 minutes.
We have a couple of listener calls. If we can go to them, let's take a call from Greg in Boulder. Greg, you're on the air.
Yeah. Thank you for this opportunity to talk also to your listeners. Thank you.
Sure, we appreciate your time. Greg, you're on KGNU.
Hi. I think that the argument that all this destruction of infrastructure has to do with Hezbollah has to be a fatuous one. There have to be other ways to deal with this than to destroy this country. Hezbollah is a small percentage of the people in the country, although they seem to have a lot of sympathy. The people in the country seem to have a lot of sympathy for Hezbollah, especially now. But the result of the Israeli actions is a tremendous amount of destruction to civilian life in terms of life and death, and to civilian life in terms of how their life is going to go on. A lot of people have lost their jobs. Thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people have been forced to move out of their homes. This can't be justified by saying, well, a few rockets are flown into the Beirut airport or come over these roads. I mean, this is way too destructive, and I find it hard to. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, let's get Mr. Gamburg's response. Thanks, Greg.
I just didn't understand what was exactly the question. If you can just, I think I already mentioned this point, and I told you that we targeting Hezbollah. We think that we have every right in the world to self-defense of our country, like any other country in the world. We think that our response is the right response. You can see the reaction of the responsible leaders of the world, including the President of the United States, who think that this is that we as a nation have the right to respond. We have the right to fight this terrorist organization, and of course, it couldn't happen if not just if the soldiers would not kidnapped, but in the last more than almost 10 years. Hezbollah was building its capability in the southern border of Lebanon with no any kind of response from the Lebanon government, and actually it allowed the Hezbollah to become this kind of. They have according to what they say and according to our sources, we know they have more than 10,000 rockets. And among them, there are rockets whose range is more than 120 kilometers. It's something that it can use, and it can reach Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And actually, we already making these preparations in Israel regarding these possibilities. And when we talk about the civilians, of course, it's very bad. But we know that there is no other way to do this. In the last 5 years, we conduct with restraint. We didn't want any kind of operations on our Lebanese border with Lebanon, because we believe that the Resolution 1551 of the United Nations Security Council that asked Lebanese government to dismantle Hezbollah and disarm Hezbollah was not done by the Lebanese government and also by the international community, which was also responsible to demand this from the Lebanese government. So I think that our targets are quite clear. We would like our soldiers back home. We would like stopping of these rockets coming to missiles coming to Israel, and we would like the dismantling of the Hezbollah. These are the three major goals that we have, and we will reach it, of course, with the help of the international community.
Yaron Gamburg is Deputy Consul General at the Consulate General of Israel in Los Angeles. We appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
It's about 10 minutes before 1 o'clock. Listener-supported KGNU. We're talking about the situation in Lebanon and the Middle East. We'll open the phone lines for listener comments for the remaining portion of the program, 303 442-4242, 442-4242. We have Lynn on the line. Hi, Lynn.
Yeah, I wanted to take Yaron to the woodshed, so sorry that he's off the line.
Do you have a quick comment for us?
Pardon?
You have a comment for us?
Yeah, could we please, elevate the conversation from the gutter of you kill my babies, I kill your babies. So what? Obviously, that's editorial commentary. Yes, there's a war going on. Yes, there's problems. But let's talk about the how and the why. And shame on Israel and the U.S. for complicity with Israel. And don't the Israelis think they're being used by the U.S.? They're our proxy on another continent to be bombed on a different continent so we don't get bombed.
All right, thanks for that comment, Lynn.
Sam, over the course of years, many years I've been doing broadcasting and journalism. I've had many occasions to interview government officials, representatives at embassies and the like. And the Deputy General, Consul General of Israel, I think, kind of was very representative of, typical government opinion. And I don't mean this in a derogatory way at all. He virtually mimics the press releases that are issued from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Tel Aviv, which is understandable. That's exactly what U.S. diplomats do.
It's their job.
It's their job. That's what they do. And he was very much sticking to that official line, and it's understandable.
Let's take a couple more calls. This is Pete in Boulder.
Yeah, I continue to be amazed at the Arab apologists, and I'm not an Arab basher at all. It's not the point. Here we have Hezbollah on one side, Hamas on one side, and we have a private army in Lebanon, and you just can't even call Lebanon a democracy, a viable democracy, while it runs a government-led army, and then it has a private army that operates at will within its own borders that the government has no control over. Then you, of course, have the stated goals of the elimination of Israel from the face of the earth by Hezbollah and Hamas both. They're both tied in with Syria and Iran. I mean, I just don't understand how, if Hezbollah and Hamas both would just recognize Israel's right to exist and just quit attacking Israel, none of this would have happened. And so then people call in and they say, shame on Israel. Well, let me ask a real quick question, and then I'll get off. If Cuba had launched bombs onto Miami, what would the response be from the United States government? What would the response be from the American people if Cuba sent their army over, captured a couple of National Guardsmen, and took them back to Cuba? Would we just blandly sit there and go, oh, well, of course we wouldn't do that. In the same way, and Cuba's not trying to wipe the U.S. off the face of the earth. I mean, there's a little mild distinction there. So, I just continue to be amazed at the people who apologize for the behavior of the Arab world towards Israel's right to exist. I think it's a problem, and until that fundamental change occurs, we're stuck with what we're stuck with for decades to come.
Pete in Lakewood, thanks for your comment. David Barsamian, any response?
I wouldn't use the analogy of Cuba. That's not particularly felicitous in this case if you want to make an argument. Cuba has been the target of U.S. state terrorism almost without break since 1959, 1960. So I wouldn't use that particular example. To talk about motivations and explain history and perspectives is not in any way to excuse or to apologize. I mean, I feel like we're back to 9/11 again, when people are trying to explain these are the motivations. This is the historical background. It doesn't mean that, we're here clapping and celebrating terrible events. The loss of one life is an enormous tragedy. It's something that's irreplaceable. And the loss of thousands of lives in the Middle East and elsewhere is an enormous tragedy. So what we're trying to do is provide context and background, and for you to come to some kind of judicious opinion about what is going on. Does the United States represent democracy in the Middle East? Well, if it does, it's ignoring democratic outcomes in Iran and in Lebanon and in Palestine. We or the Bush administration may not like the outcomes, but this is exactly the formula that was promulgated from Washington. You've got to have elections. They must be transparent. Free and transparent elections are held, and then we don't like the outcome and refuse to talk to the people who won the election. I mean, this is an enormously difficult and contradictory position.
Let's hear from Hussein in Boulder. Hi, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, is this Hussein?
Yes, this is Hussein.
Yes, you're on the air.
Yes, I just want to say the following. I mean, I don't understand how is it that Israel's right to defend itself necessitate that Israel targets bridges and roads and in northern Lebanon, some 200 kilometers away from the border. I don't understand how Israel's right to defend itself necessitates that it blows up medical supplies that are being brought in from the United Arab Emirates with the United Arab Emirates flags posted all over the trucks. I don't understand why fleeing citizens from South Lebanon are being targeted. Yellow taxis leaving Lebanon towards Syria are being targeted. I mean, even Israel has complete access to just about anything that moves in Lebanon, or complete information about things that move in Lebanon are being destroyed. Schools are being shot. I watch the LBC, Lebanese Broadcasting Corporation television, and other Lebanese and Arab TV channels, and they're broadcasting wall-to-wall coverage of the destruction, and all kinds of civilian families are being reported killed and destroyed day after day. It's not sort of one accident or two accidents. It's sort of regular, steady reporting of civilians being killed. Even Western media are saying that the overwhelming majority, almost all of the casualties, are civilians. I mean, it's sort of the responsibility of a supposedly liberal and democratic state like Israel to take extra caution in places where it targets. Why isn't Israel targeting areas that are closer to the border? Why should the Lebanese army that will eventually be entrusted in protecting the southern border? Why is the Lebanese army, which has no stake in this, why is being targeted? It's the Lebanese army is now the target.
Thank you for that.
Yesterday, Israel tried to target a dam, the biggest, the dam that protects that creates the biggest reservoir in Lebanon and the Litani, was the target yesterday. Thank God it wasn't shattered.
Hussein, thank you for your comment. We're going to try to get to a couple more callers before the end of the program. Anne in Inglewood, you're on KGNU.
Hi. I'm appalled at the United States policies in regards to Israel and its regard to the Arab world. But the thing people have to look at is that this went way back to when Israel was first created, and the fact that each government that we've had is not a pure democracy anymore. And our leaders have systematically allowed Israel to take Arab land and not give it back. And part of it, I feel, goes back to world wars and what happened to them in the concentration camps. And this is the pendulum swing back, and they almost feel intrinsically, possibly, that they have a right to do this to other countries and political enemies that they consider because it was done to them. And I think that's totally erroneous, and that at some point the Israelis are going to have to just sit down and say enough.
Thank you, Anne. Last word this afternoon to Buster. Buster, you're on the air.
Hi.
Could you turn down your radio, please?
Okay. I was just going to suggest that one positive action we could take is to all call our senators, congressmen, and ask them to stop giving aid to Israel as a punishment for these horrendous acts that they're perpetrating, and not just making it contingent on whether they stop, because they couldn't get a bill passed before they've destroyed those countries, at the rate they're doing it. But just even if they destroy them, after the bill's passed, just to cut off all aid to Israel and say, this is horrendous what you're doing. We're not going to support you anymore. If we could maybe get a bill started.
Thanks for that comment, Buster, and that'll about do it for Metro today. I want to thank all the callers and our guests, Tariq Ali, author and political activist, as well as Deputy Consul General from the Israeli Consulate in Los Angeles, Yaron Gamburg. Thanks to Tim for handling the phones. If you have a question or a comment about this program or anything you hear on KGNU, you're always welcome to call our comment line. That's 303-447-9911. 447-9911 is the KGNU comment line.